Leadership, particularly in high-stakes scenarios like war or national policy, always reveals the delicate dance between power and morality. Take President Trump's recent moves, where one moment he's brokering talks for peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and in the next, doubling down on aggressive deportation policies. It reflects a unique approach, one that some might call contradictory, but to others, it seems grounded in his America First philosophy.
Yeah, it's like commanding troops, isn't it? You gotta make the hard calls, even when the moral waters get muddy. Look, I've been there. I've had to balance what's right against what's necessary. And let me tell you, those two don't always align. Trump plays it like a wartime general, balancing strategy and survival, plain and simple.
Exactly, Duke. And this perception of Trump as a disciplined, unwavering leader seems to resonate with the public. According to CBS polling, 70% believe he's fulfilling his campaign promises. That's no small feat. It's almost as though the more divisive the policy, the more impactful the perception of his leadership. But we have to ask, at what moral cost?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Morality in leadership, it's not black and white, it's tactical. Those tariffs on steel, on aluminum, for example, that's about maintaining sovereignty, keeping your supply lines secure. Call it hardline, call it protectionist, I call it survival strategy. I used to say on deployment, if the mission can't function without it, lock it down. Same thing here, Trump's just locking it down.
That's an important point. Policies like those tariffs, or even his stricter immigration enforcement, they are strategic moves. But they also create ripples, both intended and unintended, in the moral fabric of society. It makes me think, are actions like aggressively removing undocumented immigrants purely about law and security? Or is there a deeper, almost philosophical justification here to reaffirm the rule of law as a cornerstone of American identity?
Maybe, but when it comes down to it, you gotta act. That steel tariff? 15 seconds in a war room, or the White House, and you'd make the same call. You can't hesitate when stability's on the line. In command, we used to say, deliver the blow now, tally the losses after.
Fascinating. I mean, leadership often demands that cold pragmatism, but layering it with perceived morality. Well, that's how leaders like Trump rally a base. These moves aren't just tactical, they're symbolic. And yet the moral burden on leadership figures intensifies in moments of global tension. Take his advocacy for peace solutions in Ukraine as a counterbalance to domestic hardline policies. How does the public reconcile these acts? Are they connected, strategically or morally?
Look, this is where Trump's strength lies, though. He's like a chess player. Yeah, deportations look like a rook swiping a row, and the peace talks with Putin and Zelensky, that's the night. It's all about placement, maybe even hitting extremes to force shifts in power, you know?
Interesting metaphor, Duke. So, he's projecting strength while weaving morality as the thread holding it together. Whether that thread frays or strengthens over time remains a larger question of leadership legacy. And in your military experience, do the troops always believe in the morality of their leaders' decisions, or does compliance stem purely from authority?
Authority most of the time, no doubt. But if the leader's conviction shows, you'd follow them into the fire. That conviction, it sticks, man. Shared hardship, strong actions, it bonds people, even if they don't fully agree with every decision. Makes people think, you wouldn't burn us unless it matters. That's Trump. Like him or not, people believe the guy isn't bluffing.
Authority underpinned by belief. That's an age-old interplay. And it's this very framework, projected strength ensuring compliance, where morality becomes relative. I wonder how this dynamic plays out on an even more psychological plane, like in Trump's direct conversations with Putin and Zelensky. You must wonder how such strength manifests in settings so delicate. That's exactly it, Duke. Projected strength doesn't just command compliance, it shapes the broader psychological landscape. Take Trump's discussions with Putin and Zelensky, for instance. These aren't just meetings about policy, they're intricate psychological dances. It's not just the words spoken, but the strength conveyed, the calculated pauses, the deliberate authority. Trump seems to grasp this instinctively, balancing dominance with just enough trust to keep everyone at the table. It's the art of leadership in its purest form.
Balance? Nah, this is straight power play. You step into a room with Putin, you better be able to puff your chest out bigger than his. That's not flowers in psychology, it's dominance. Sure, trust builds later maybe, but the first round, it's all about landing a blow.
A fair view, Duke, though I think dominance and trust aren't mutually exclusive. Picture it. Imagine Churchill negotiating with Zik in 1943 Nigeria. Both men held power, but had to navigate delicate cultural and political bridges to avoid derailing progress. It's a historical lens where force and finesse often coexist. Is that not similar to how Trump frames strength even as he extends peace offerings?
Churchill wasn't ringing up Moscow mid-crisis. Thing is, Trump's different. He cuts deals like it's a battlefield. You pick your target, hit him where it stings, then lean just enough to say, "You're lucky I stuck around to negotiate." Trust? For Putin or Zelensky, trust isn't belief. It's respect for the weight behind Trump's words.
Perhaps. But doesn't that weight, that respect, stem from psychological groundwork? Leadership like Trump's leverages consistency and strength, a power image that says, "You'll gain more working with me than against me." It reminds me of smaller negotiations, say, settling disputes between trade unions, or even personal diplomacy. The psychology remains similar. Do you intimidate first, or reassure?
Always intimidate first. If they don't respect you, it's game over. On the ground, we'd say, show who's holding the high ground, then talk about lower ground later. Trump's smart. His peace talks don't scream kumbaya, they scream leverage.
Leverage, yes, but also a strategy aimed at creating room for trust to grow. Whether overt or subtle, this trust can shift minds. In Putin's camp, in Zelensky's team, and even in the perception among international observers. The message being, America remains a global anchor. But Duke, do you think Putin, hardened as he is, trusts anyone beyond calculation?
Not a chance. Guys like Putin, trust's not in their vocab. He respects Trump because Trump's unpredictable, a wild card. That unpredictability? That's what makes men like him tread lightly. But it's not trust, it's caution.
Unpredictability as a psychological weapon. I like that framing. It breeds uncertainty which, paradoxically, stabilizes negotiation dynamics because the stakes feel heightened. But still, one has to wonder about the long-term impact. Over time, does unpredictability undermine the very trust needed as diplomatic ties evolve?
Maybe, maybe not. Depends on whether you set the endgame right. You can't win every battle, but you can win the war. Bottom line, Chukwuka, psychology only matters when actions back it up. And Trump moves. He's not sitting around with theories. He's shaping outcomes.
True, his decisive actions often validate his unpredictability. Still, it's fascinating to explore how his calculated strength dances with the need to forge fragile trust lines. And these negotiations, if observed closely, feel almost like a manual for navigating power structures, don't they?
Manual? Man, let's call it what it is. It's war by other means. Strategy, patience, and a firm backbone. Anyone trying to read too deep into it just needs to know this. Trump acts, and the world moves. Pretty simple when you see it his way.
It's intriguing, Duke. Just as we touched on Trump's calculated strength on the geopolitical stage, the same principles surface in his domestic policies. Look at the contrast. Unpredictable toughness with deportation policies versus moments of empathy, like advocating to bring Marc Fogel home. It makes you wonder, are these moves purely strategic, or is there a deeper balance between empathy and leverage in his leadership approach?
Empathy or manipulation? Man, that's a thin line if you ask me. Leadership's not about singing kumbaya, it's about results. Every decision comes with a cost. Trump's just real about that, not sugarcoating it for anyone. It ain't manipulation, it's strategy.
But don't you think strategy, particularly in leadership, often employs a certain degree of emotional manipulation? Think about it. By bringing Fogel back under public spotlight, Trump appeals to human empathy, showcasing moral authority. Yet beneath that, could we argue there's a utilitarian calculation, leveraging this goodwill to justify harsher actions elsewhere?
Yeah, I can see that. But here's the thing. Manipulation sounds dirty. like it's all smoke and mirrors. What he's doing is pretty plain. He's making moves that'll hold us together as a nation. It's like mission strategy, right? You win hearts with one hand and secure turf with the other.
Ah, the classic Machiavellian principle. Better to be feared than loved. Ideally both. Trump's actions seem to align with that ethos, blending assertive moves like steel tariffs with gestures of humanity. Do you think maintaining this balance bolsters or weakens trust over time?
Trust doesn't come cheap, man. You build it by showing strength first and backing it up with action. People gotta believe you're not bluffing. And Trump? People believe he means business. That's where the trust is. No fluff, just follow through.
A compelling perspective, Duke. It's almost as though his unpredictability becomes a form of consistency, a tool for holding power. Still, some critics might view this as manipulative, a way to command loyalty by keeping others on edge emotionally.
So what? If it works, it works. Listen, in the field we'd say, confusion breeds control. If your opponent's off balance, you've already won. The voters, the allies, even the critics, they all stay watching because they don't know his next move. That's power, man.
Tactical chaos. It aligns perfectly with theories of psychological manipulation and governance, using emotion as a means to an end. But I wonder, how sustainable is this approach long term? Can such sharp contrast between empathy and cold strategy maintain cohesion, or does it risk pulling society apart at its seams?
Depends on whether the seams were strong to start with. Trump's not tearing anything apart. He's forcing a reset, making folks confront what they stand for. That's action with purpose. That's leadership, brother.
Leadership. The very concept evokes a tapestry of decisions, some fueled by empathy, others by calculated force. Trump's actions, whether celebrated or condemned, invite reflection on how we as a society perceive strength versus morality, manipulation versus sincerity. Perhaps that's the crux of this discussion. Leadership, for better or worse, shapes not only policy, but the moral direction of a people.
And at the end of the day, Chukwuka, it's about taking action. You can talk theory all day, but Trump moves. That's what makes him who he is. Period.
Indeed, Duke. And that's all for today, everyone. Leadership, be it defined by empathy, manipulation, or both, leaves a legacy worth scrutinizing. Thank you for joining us in unpacking these concepts. Until next time, stay critical, stay engaged, and as always, stay informed.